You start off wide, right? With all these options and choices.
Yeah, I'm looking for substance. So if you can't come with the substance level of conversation, I have no interest.
Okay.
You black man taking a liking to how my lifestyle is living and how I'm going, man. Being intrigued, man. That's very humbling for me, man.
You know, just in our conversation the other day, if we had hit record, that would have made a pretty good podcast.
Man, you know what? I always think about that because my wife got me this AI recorder for Christmas. And usually sometimes like I'll ask a person like, hey, can we record, the initial conversation? Because that is the most organic stuff that comes about. I just had a conversation with a lady from New Jersey yesterday. And as we were talking, she wants to get on the podcast and she was telling me her life story right there. And I was like, man, this is such great content. But what we had the other day, man, was pure magic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, I've done lots of podcasts. Every once in a while, the podcast host is just engaging to talk to, full of good ideas. And, like, I really appreciated our dialogues. I feel like this could be a good podcast. Yeah.
I think so, man. But I think we're ready to go. So I listened to your TED Talk. That was amazing, man. And I'm not just talking it up for the podcast. That was really enlightening from a lot of different perspectives because you hit on some key things that a lot of people don't tend to think about. The time was one of the big things when it comes to just people. I don't know how to say this, privilege, right? How much time does a person who has privilege have versus someone who doesn't have that time?
Right.
So would you just kind of talk about that a little bit? Because I really want to add your podcast, your TED Talk at the end of this, because I want people to go to that. So can you speak on that privilege again?
Yeah, sure. So the podcast, the hook of it, like the start of it, was that I worked at the oldest women's college in the country. Right. This women's college was founded in 1772. Right. So whenever the U.S. is like, oh, it's our centennial, this college is like, whatever, dude, hold our beer. We've been educating women since before you were even a thing. Right. But when I was working at that college, everything there was built around women and women's needs. Right. But I've grown up. I mean, y'all know, everybody knows the song. It's a man's world. Right. I grew up in situations where things were mostly built around men's needs. And then as women got into the workforce more so, it sort of has shifted slowly, but I'm at this place where from the beginning, it's been about women. And so the hook on my TEDx talk, the beginning of it is, for the first time in my life, I had to wait to go to the bathroom. I had to wait because my building had like multiple women's rooms, but only had one like all gender restroom, but it was single use. So one person go in there, lock the door. And so as a man, all of my career, all my life, if I had an 11 o'clock meeting, if it was 5 minutes away, I would leave my office 7 minutes ahead of time, go to the bathroom and still make the meeting on time and not even think about it. Suddenly, when there's only one bathroom in my building and it might be locked sometimes, suddenly I had to think about it for the first time in my life. And then I challenged myself to get humble about it. I'm like, okay, so my wife's been waiting for the bathroom for 46 years of her life, right? And so she's probably put some mental energy into it, where if we go to a football game, we go to a basketball game, we go to a Broadway show, a kid's band concert, whatever it is we're going to, that she has put some conscious effort into it because it takes her more time. And that too, over my life, how many meetings have I been early to, sitting there and the boss sees me arrive early and goes, oh, well, this Alan, he's on it. He's arrived early. And my colleagues who are women showing up right on time, but they're not early because they had to probably wait in line to go to the bathroom, right? And so I started kind of doing the math on that because I got out a calculator and I was like, how many hours have I not stood in line for the bathroom? And so, that's the hook from it. And one thing that's not in the TED Talk for a lot of your listeners, you might know about food deserts, redlining. In my community, I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina. The red line follows essentially Highway 220 north south. On the west side, I'm not even kidding. From my house, I can make it to 8 different grocery stores in 10 minutes or less. 8 different grocery stores in 10 minutes or less from my house. 8 different ones. That's ridiculous. You get to the east side of the red line. If I lived just 10 minutes east, there's like 2 grocery stores on that side and like 22 on this. It's insane. And when you think about that, when I go to the grocery store, I don't factor time. I got one 6 minutes up the road, got one 8 minutes down the road. I got the super fancy one about 10 minutes down the road. But people on the east side, especially if they got to do public transportation, but even if they got a car, that's an hour round trip. That's an hour round trip for them that they're not earning money.
I think about that myself, but I've never really tried to quantify it. And I think that, when you do kind of think about privilege, bias, and inequality and things of that nature, you only think of it from the human standpoint, right? You only think of it from the human side of things, but you never think of it from a mathematical perspective. It's a lot of immoral math taken into privilege that people don't really realize. And I think as you just said that, I'm thinking like right now, even myself, I can walk down the street, make a left, and I'm at Target, I'm at Planet Fitness, I'm at Kroger's, I'm at CVS, I'm at Walgreens, I'm everywhere. But now that I think, it's people on the other side of my city where they have a huge obstacle to face just to get to a grocery store. So that's amazing perspective when you try to quantify it with math, man, honestly.
And I tell you, I heard somebody say once, it's expensive to be poor. And I'm like, you got it. Because the reality is, if I need a check cashed, okay, I got a bank and I got some money in the bank, not a lot, but I got some money in there. I got a bank, I can go over there. Okay, but if I was poor, maybe I don't have a bank and I got to go to a check cashing service, and someone who's already poor is having to pay a fee to get that check cashed, whereas I get to do it for free, right? And so it's those kinds of things where, because like you were just saying, kind of the individual, like if you look up the word racism, there's 2 definitions. But in our media discourse and our dialogue, people always stick on definition 1. The 2 definitions. Definition 1 is somebody with a bigoted attitude, right? That's like my uncle at the holidays, right? Who I'm always scared is going to say something like Uncle so-and-so, oh, don't say the thing, right? So the attitude racism. But definition 2 is the system. It's the system. It's the fact that redlining existed. And when redlining ended, it's not like the government or banks or anybody was like, well, we should make up for the last 150 years. No, they were like, okay, well, now we're going to make it fair, quote unquote, from this point forward, which that's a good thing, but it doesn't solve the generational wealth that has come or not come before that point, right? Yeah, the 2 definitions. One is an attitude, one's a system. And when we don't get specific on which one's which, that's when we get in trouble.
That's another part of immoral math that I've thought about before in the past. That term came to me, I want to say from a movie or some just a general conversation. I can't coin where I got it from. But, yeah, sure, we'll do the right thing going forward, but we will not even pay attention to all of the equations that got us to this point. And we will not find a sum for that math that gets you guys what you need and what you're deserved, right? Because at some point in time, it's immeasurable. It's so much money. It's unfathomable, especially to a country, to want to have to pay back what you owe. It would create so many problems in our society, especially. I mean, think about it. We still got the Ku Klux Klan walking around here igniting things, and no one will do the math on that and say, why is the Black Panthers so vilified, but the Ku Klux Klan can still hold conventions and march through streets and do things like that? So, I mean, this country is not prepared to pay back what they owe people.
Right. And the reality, I'm glad you mentioned those groups, because there is no public good in history that I have ever heard the KKK has done. But the Black Panthers, a lot of people, especially my fellow white people, they have this picture of it from movies, right? That it's militant or this, that, and the other. And I'm like, y'all don't get it. Where there was community activism that was dealing with actual needs. Show me anybody in the white robes doing anything good for it. No, that's just like, it's just white rage and fear that white supremacy is not going to last. That's what that's about. The Black Panthers were about building community. They were about building up the communities, and they were about recognizing the inequities in resources and addressing that, like actually addressing that. And so, a lot of times, especially my fellow white people, they'll equivocate. They'll mention those two groups back to back. I'm like, you can't. Mm-mm, mm-mm.
See, but you always have to create a myth that creates the perception that you want to see. So one of the big things with the Black Panthers is I hear people say, even my own people, and I've thought about it myself, oh, well, because of the dismantling of the Black Panthers, they all branched off into gangs. That's not totally true at all. Any person who is coming out of prison will take something good and turn it bad if they're not a moral person, a morally sound person. So people don't really realize that a lot of people came out of prison and maybe they adopted the mentality of the Black Panthers to create a gang, but the Black Panthers were never a gang in and of itself. That's like saying motorcycle clubs that are still good motorcycle clubs are all gang members now, that motorcycle clubs are actually just gangs. That's not the truth. Guys came home from Vietnam. Some of those guys got in trouble and went to prison. And when they came out, they blended that style of motorcycle clubbing into gangs that we see now. So you have to emerge, you have to push fantasy into reality in order to create some of these racial tropes that people come up with to justify the immoral math, right? To justify it.
And the thing you're saying, I mean, it makes me think about two things. One is, I don't know, practically speaking, the difference between a gang and a country club. I mean, the difference between a gang and a country club is what paperwork and which people have written the laws. In other words, there has been no point in U.S. history when Congress, the people who write our laws, have actually been racially representative of who we are. And here Congress is, this overwhelmingly white men, overwhelmingly rich white men, deciding what counts as a felony and what counts as a misdemeanor. Come on now, right? And so when I think about gangs, and when I think about if there had actually been those lofty words in our document, all men are created equal, blah, 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 Declaration of Independence. Meanwhile, we're going to write, some people count as 3/5 of a person, right? So like if there had been authenticity to those words on the front end, universal authenticity, gangs might not be called gangs. Gangs might be called clubs. Gangs might be called civic organizations. It's the white supremacist narrative that says, I'm going to call these people who are not like me, I'm going to use the word gang because me and my people have written all the laws. Some of the things we have written in those laws, they are breaking, quote unquote. And so now I'm going to call them gangs, right?
Well, when you consider that those gangs that people mention came up in the 60s and early 70s and they made a lot of money off of marijuana, right? They were selling marijuana to create revenue and psychedelic drugs. And now psychedelic drugs and marijuana are for the privileged now. So the rules are off the table, even to the point where the DA won't come into some of these cannabis shops because there's this distinction between what's this class versus the other class and what actually the law is now. So you can see that privilege of, okay, now we're going to bend the rules and move the needle. Sorry about all you guys who went to prison for 25 years, 40 years for selling marijuana. Now it's free. Now anybody can do it. And now you still don't see those same people, African Americans and Hispanics, being able to be given the proper opportunities to sell right now, even in a free market.
That's right. And so this is the reality. And this is U.S. History 101. It is that when white people want to adopt, appropriate, or colonize something, then it becomes okay. And if we don't adopt it, appropriate it, or colonize it, it's bad. And so everything you look at, that's the thing. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's crazy how textbook it is, and yet how ironically our actual textbooks in school are telling us fairy tales about Thanksgiving, telling us fairy tales about the civil rights movement, telling us fairy tales, right? And white people, my fellow white people, love fairy tales. We love a good fairy tale.
You have to. And when you are an oppressor, you have to create a magical history. You have to create fantasy. You have to rely on fiction. I mean, when you look at the Nazis and the fantastical things that they talked about and spoke about, they almost had to walk around hide to cope with the things that they were doing. So I noticed that with an oppressive system, and not just, it's always a black and white or minority majority kind of framework that we put this in, but any type of privilege, even in my own community with African Americans who are prominent, they have to create a kind of fantastical reasoning behind having their wealth and how it's so much different than the poor, or they're different from the poorer class of people. So I think it's just a human thing. We're tribal.
And I agreed. And one of the things that, and it's interesting because obviously I'm a white dude, but as a white dude, I'm a little more involved in the Black community in my area than the average white dude is. From the sidelines, I get to hear things that it's not my job to judge, but things that I have questions about, things that I wonder about. And some of my friends who are Black, if we have a close enough relationship, we can have that level of dialogue about what's up with this competition within the Black community. Help me understand that. I'm not in there, but I see this, right? Like I for example, I had a friend and fraternity brother. And for those listening who don't know, I'm a white guy, but I'm in the 5th largest historically Black fraternity in the country. I'm in a graduate chapter. And so
that's crazy as hell.
It is. Oh, and you haven't even seen me step. I mean, like you want to see an old chubby white man step. You haven't lived it, I'm telling you. So when that hurricane hit Western North Carolina, me and one of my frat brothers, we were driving my truck up to deliver some water to a local church that was distributing it. And on the way up, I was hearing these on the way up the mountain, and then on the way down the mountain, I heard 2 different conversations. One of the conversations was he was talking to me about how he had worked at a historically Black college, but at that historically Black college, he didn't think that he was ever deemed Black enough. On the other side of the trip, he was going after Kamala Harris, talking about how she wasn't Black enough. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay, so I'm on the outside. So I like, it's not my job. It's not my job. I have no clue who's Black enough or not. I don't know. But what I do know is you're telling me 2 different stories. One of the stories is there's a community that's policing that a community that you're a part of that is telling you what counts as Black enough, and that's unfair and you don't like that, and that doesn't work. That's not good. That's not building your community. It's artificial competition that doesn't need to be there. And then on the other trip, that like drive up, drive back, he was like, well, Kamala, she's only half Black and her parents are immigrants and this, that, and oh, she's an AKA, but she didn't go to her first convention until she started running for it. And I'm like, I want to understand how both of those things can be true stories. I want to understand that. I don't yet. And I don't know if I ever will, and it's not my place to. But this is the other thing, man. Being white, I'll tell you one of the advantages of being white. If I get more educated, nobody in my community shames me for that. If I get more wealthy, nobody in my community shames me for that. There's no one thinks I've sold out if I exceed where I came from.
Well, that is a great thing in the white community that I have noticed. But all things that come about like that, I like to think they come from something. So when African Americans who don't have a certain amount of wealth say that a person sold out, I've noticed it myself. There is a point of no return, I'll say, when you reach a certain financial level where you're no longer a Black person. But I've noticed that with white people and all types of people, you're no longer a person who fits into a box anymore, because now your privilege has become so much different than everybody else to where you can't find commonality anymore. So oftentimes you find yourself speaking from a wealth class, not a color class. And I've tried to stray away from that myself because I do okay for myself. And I try to stay connected and grounded to my community. But I find it hard because when you look at, I'll tell you like this, I call it the fish tank kind of analogy. When you are in the fish tank, you don't know if you're in an ocean or not. You just know, like, hey, I'm in this fish tank. There are sides and there are places where I don't go, you know. But once you take a step outside of that fish tank and you look back at that fish tank, now you see, like, hey, that's a box that they're in. That's the box that I was in. And I never want to go back in that fish tank again. And I really feel like when Black people reach that point, we become the privileged class. We merge.
And the thing you're talking about is it's layered. It's layered because if you're a fish in the fish tank, all you know is the water. That's all you know, right? Yeah. And if you're a fish in a fish tank, I don't know if you've ever looked at a fish tank, but from the inside, a lot of times it's like reflective almost, right? And so when you're in the fish tank, this speaks to subcultures. When you're in a culture, it's hard to name the culture, especially when that culture is everything you're in your existence. I told you, I think on our previous conversation, that when I do workshops with executives and mid-level managers a lot. And one of the things I do is I give them homework to come back the following day of the workshop and bring me something that's funny about their culture. Something funny about their culture. Here's the thing, man. White people don't understand that whiteness is a culture. White people have decided that whiteness is the canvas and that every other culture is paint on the canvas, but that the canvas is the default, right? And canvases happen to also be white. So that just leans into the metaphor, right? But I've literally had white people tell me, oh, I think I'm part of being tall. I think being tall is a culture. And I'm like, that is not a culture, man. Can you name language markers, food markers, ethnic markers, geographical markers, something that speaks to being tall? I'm 6'2". It's not a culture, man. It's not a culture. Because the dude could not conceive of his whiteness. He could not think of his whiteness because I've been in white communities where for months, no one will say anything about race. For months. You think when I'm hanging out in Black communities or Latinx communities, you think it's not coming up for months? No, it's an everyday part of the conversation because America has been racialized in a certain direction, and that direction just insulates white people. And there's zero incentive for white people to stretch out, to get out of the fish tank. And I was talking to this dude, and I did this tour of all these colleges, and I met with like the dean of students at all the colleges, and this one dude, this was probably the one white guy that made me proud of my people. And I spoke to like 35, 40 deans of students that were white, and probably another 15 who were Black or Latinx. And but this one white dude, he was the one white guy that I thought to myself, you know what? You've got it right. But one of the things he told me, he goes, look, I can get all my white staff to go to all the trainings in the world. And then when they clock out at the end of the day at work, they drive back to white suburbia, watch white television, read white books, listen to white music. Like there's no incentive for them to internalize this in any way that's going to actually change them. And I'm training them on implicit bias training, this, that, and the other, LGBT inclusion training, this, that, and the other. And if it doesn't impact their life, they're insulated from it. They're insulated, and it's just academic to them, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like National Geographic type stuff, right?
It is. It's like, let's talk about this stuff in the abstract, but...
So the same thing that you just spoke of when it comes to white people is the same thing I notice with my own people, is that, you know, when you can come in and touch it a little bit and move it around and help it out a little bit, you know, and then once you get back to where you're back at peace. You watch the white movies, you watch the musicals. You no longer go to the hole in the wall anymore. Now you're at the events, the soirees, the nice legit parties. You won't even touch those things that you used to touch. So I just noticed the similarities, and I'm just the person who I can't, in my brain, I cannot just overlook certain things that are right in my face. I'm an observer by nature. So I have to call these things out. Like, for instance, I was at an event with a lot of the sorority groups, right? The prominent African-American sorority groups. And we were helping with some people who were less fortunate. Let's just say that. And there was a lot of giving out and serving and helping. But I tend to notice that the room was segregated, was highly segregated. Me being in the middle, never being in a sorority, and nobody knows. I don't really broadcast my finances, right? So I dress like a normal person in the city. I'm from Chicago. We all do that. No matter if we're multimillionaires, we dress like we're from Chicago. So I'm walking around. I'm seeing all these people with the sorority outfits on, matching coats, and they're doing their little high fives and they're taking pictures together. And then they go back and they serve and they give out things. But I noticed like you never blend with the commoners. And I'm around hugging people and, talking to people who I know, and kids are running up hugging me and stuff. And I'm like, they never really got from behind the table in a sense. So there's this separating factor that I see. I want to jump really fast because when we were having that conversation, another point that you mentioned was when a black person walks into a room versus when a white person walks into a room. Can you speak on that just a little bit more? Because I have my own views, but I thought what you said was great.
Yeah, and I like the exchange here. So just for context, I spent 20 years in Boone, North Carolina, y'all. Y'all can look it up on a map. It's the middle of nowhere. And I worked at this university. It was the second least racially diverse university in the whole UNC system, right? University of North Carolina system. And so a lot of my black colleagues and Latinx colleagues, they shared this experience with me. And after they shared it, I kind of watched it. Every time I walk into a room as a white guy, I don't spend 10 seconds, 15 seconds looking around the room to see who looks like me. I don't do that because the reality is I'm not looking for a person that shares something in common that I think is going to provide me some psychological safety, some emotional safety, something that the rest of the room's not going to provide. Because as a white guy, all the society, all the systems are built for my safety and comfort anyway, right? And so, but I had some black elders and some Latinx elders talking, and they're like, you know what? And once one or two of them said it to me, when I walk into a room and I see a black person, see a Latino person, I watch them and I watch this happening where there's this quick little like, who's in here that looks like me, right? Now I appreciated what you shared because this was in the rural mountains of Appalachia. Trust me, you're a black faculty or staff member. You're already brave in a different way showing up to work, right? And so, but yeah, that's one of those things that in my TED talk, I was like, well, how many rooms have I walked in where I'm not looking for someone who looks like me, right? And when I think too about the LGBT community, right, this is a community that you can't just look at someone and go, oh, that's part of the community, right? With race, we can do that pretty readily. With the LGBT community, or for that matter, the Jewish community, you might be looking for symbols, right? You're looking for a symbol. You're looking for a piece of jewelry. You're looking for a rainbow, this, that, or the other. You're looking for a last name in the Jewish community. You're looking for these different things to find your people, find your tribe, right? The reality is, from where I come from, where I got all the privilege, man, middle class, white, college educated, man, all the things. I'm never looking for my people within that for any kind of safety because my people built the whole freaking system for my safety, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
It does. It does. And just to double back on you, like when we had spoke the other day, my wife thinks I'm a prick a little bit because like I told you, I walk in these rooms and I think I built up a huge amount of tolerance for myself. And I'm sure there are a lot of other people like me who have, where I just don't see it anymore. And it does now when I think about it, because after we got off the phone, I was thinking about that. I was like, there is a bit of arrogance in me to actually not care, but it does take energy to not care. So I wouldn't say that it's effortless. It's almost like a big F you, like I walk in the room like, hey, what's going on? How's sport? And I'll shake somebody's hand. I'll tap somebody on the shoulder. I almost try to treat them like I would treat a room full of black people. And I'm sure that's got to feel weird for them when I come in the room so arrogant. They're probably looking on the other end. Like, who's this black cocky dude walking in here that is careless? So I think you have to build a little bit of a resilience. And I can't say that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know that there's a huge amount of talk these days about victimhood and how minorities are relying on victimization as a way to create opportunities such as DEI and other tools that we may have to use in this society. Can you speak on that just a little bit?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think it is a BS false dichotomy that the media is selling us to separate poor white people and poor black people and poor Latino people, period. I think that if I want to say, hey, did y'all know statistically this racial group has less access to this than other racial groups, That's just a statistic. It's just a number. It's just a part of our reality in a colonized white supremacist nation. It is not an excuse for anything. It is just a reality. Now, here's the thing is, the white Europeans who colonized this place decided that rugged individualism was going to be their standard when they wanted it to be their standard. And when they don't want it to be their standard, it's not the standard. And so this idea, and I see commentators out here talking about this, and I'm like, look, these are two different things. I can talk about statistics about how different racialized groups are dealing with different things, and that is one thing. And then individuals, they are resilient or not. They are fighting. They have figured out how to navigate that system or not. And so the idea that citing statistics about the fact that the incarceration rates of people of color, Black people, Latino people are so much higher, and then conservatives will go, oh, well, you're just saying that as an excuse, blah, blah, blah.
And half of that shit is for like weed and minor drug offenses and 3 strikes out, stealing candy 3 times.
for laws that were written by and for white people, right? When you go think about the word misdemeanor, right? Misdemeanor means like demeanor is like, acceptable behavior, your demeanor. Misdemeanor is what's unacceptable behavior. Okay, so a bunch of white people at the founding of our country, all through Congress, and this is also the state legislatures in every single state, have decided what counts as misdemeanor. What is demeanor? And then what counts as a misdemeanor? When you think about this, professional, right? And I do a lot of workshops with like a lot of managers. And the thing that's interesting is a lot of mid-level management is getting a lot more diverse in terms of gender, a lot more women, getting a good bit more diverse in race. But the top level management is white guy city, man. It's just white guys on top of white guys on top of white guys. But a lot of their mid-level managers and all the pictures they take of their company of the mid-level managers to show how diverse they are. So the point, I just lost my point. The point is this, is that when I say the word professional, if I got 100 people in the room, there's 100 opinions on what that means. But most of those opinions are grounded in what white men thought counted as professional in the Industrial Revolution, period. When the Industrial Revolution was happening and white men were the majority of the workforce, before the GI Bill, before a lot more Black people and Latino people entered the workforce, before a lot more women entered the workforce, Rosie the Riveter, before all that happened, men were like, okay, this is professional. Then more women came in, more racialized minorities came in. It's not like the men who were managers called time out and were like, hey, yeah. So we consider this, and this behavior professional. Do we need to reevaluate that now that our workforce is more diverse? Are those white norms? And we pretend that white norms like professional are universal norms. That demeanor, if you think about demeanor, what's your demeanor? What's the right demeanor? And then what counts as a misdemeanor, right? This is based on white cultural values. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. And your listeners, I don't know if your listeners are wearing your seatbelts or not. I'm going to say something a little controversial. Those white norms, I'm not saying 100% of them are bad. There's a few of them we could keep, but we need to scrutinize and choose what to keep or not intentionally. Because white people, one of the things we're good at, man, we're good at schedules and clocks and calendars, man. Like, I told you I'm in a historically Black fraternity. And like, whenever our president's like an event and, he's like, oh yeah, you got to be there at 11. My white dude ass is there at, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can cuss here, but Mr. Whitey McWhite dude here, when he hears 11, and my dad's German, so I'm like extra white in that way. When I hear 11, that means I'm going to be there at 10:50, right? And so, but time, the weird way that white people are obsessed with time can be detrimental, but sometimes it can be good. So what I'm saying is all these norms about professionalism is that some of them, that the old white dudes in the Industrial Revolution, some of them maybe we should keep. But the reality is we never stopped as a culture when our workforce got more diverse and called time out and said, okay, now we got Black people at the table, Latino people at the table, a lot more women who are also, and I hate to keep saying like Black people, Latino people, and women, because spoiler alert, there are Black women, Latino women, there are Black Latina women, right? So like, in other words, we slice and dice, but there's intersections as well. And we got to keep the intersections in mind. At no point did we as a society reevaluate what is professional. I think in 2018, the U.S. Navy said it was okay for Black women to have natural hair for the dress code in 2018. I think it was 28, either 2016 or 2018. That the natural way their hair grew out of their head was suddenly in the 21st century deemed acceptable.
And before that, it was conduct unbecoming. They catch all for a lot of different. If you can't catch them one way, you catch them with an umbrella policy. And that's the same thing in laws. We have these laws that catch people under umbrellas no matter what the situation is. So I've always learned that when I hear that conduct unbecoming rule in different companies and organizations, it always leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because I'm like, that is the way that you can catch a person. And usually, like you said, it's a bunch of white men at the top making these rules and deciding on what conduct unbecoming is. What is a misdemeanor? That is a misdemeanor in a lot of organizations. I'm going to get you this way if I can't one way. It's always something to catch you with. And I feel like that's where a lot of minorities feel challenged with by trying to merge into white society, because at the end of the day, you're being judged by white men, usually white men at the top. So we had this TED Talk that I was listening to. I listened to it 3 times now. You have it, excuse me. I don't know. I just had a brain fart. But I listened to your TED Talk like 3 times. And one of the things that stood out was you told this story about how your grandparents were immigrants coming into this country, and the position that they were in, a juxtaposition at the end, was incredible, because you talked about the end result being that your grandfather was working for, who was the gentleman who owned the medicine stores?
Was working for Mr. Dowdy. And so, yeah, the story is, and this is something interesting, because in my work with organizations, one of the biggest challenges is getting white people who are not wealthy, poorer white people, to understand their privilege. That's one of the harder things. And so this story that I can tell has a level of authenticity that pulls them in. My dad, literally, he lost 3 brothers in World War II. He's right off the boat, German immigrant. They were refugees. They had lost their home. So he lost his 3 older brothers. By the time he was 8 years old, 3 different times he got a knock on the door that one of his brothers had died, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, he's German. And so his brothers were fighting for Germany in World War II. Y'all know what that means, right? Y'all know what that means. I had 3 uncles wearing the Nazi uniform. That is a real part. On another continent that I have, I've never been to Germany. I've never knew those uncles. This was over well before I was born. And I'm not saying that to absolve myself, because trust me, I am responsible for white supremacy and dismantling it just as much if I didn't have 3 uncles who happen to wear Nazi uniforms. But I'm just saying that for context. They came here, and so many white people I know, especially poorer white people, have the sad immigrant story about pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, right? And so when I tell that story, I tell the whole, like this part I didn't even tell in the TED Talk, but my dad was so malnourished, he lost one of his eyes. So he has a glass eye to this day. And so, like, they lost everything they had. They lost everything they had. They had to move to a country where they didn't speak the language. They had an apartment with rats in it. They had to be sponsored by a church that was sponsoring refugees. And as soon as they set foot on U.S. soil, they were handed an invisible card called white privilege. And the thing that's so fascinating, about 10 miles down the road from where I live, is the International Civil Rights Museum. And the International Civil Rights Museum was based at the Woolworths. Woolworths, for those of you who don't know, if you're not of the generation to know what a 5 and dime was, imagine if CVS had a Jimmy John's in it. That's how it used to be, right? That the drugstore would have a restaurant, like a deli in it, right? And so my dad, the sponsor for my family, owned a small drugstore chain in Greensboro and High Point, North Carolina. And my dad got to witness history. He got to witness these sit-ins where brave Black men and women were sitting at whites-only lunch counters asking to be served. They were trying to disrupt the system. In most of these cases, the places where they were asking to be served, they would take those people's money. Those Black people could buy food there. They couldn't sit at the counter. They have to take it with them. They could buy school supplies. They just have to take it with them. They just wouldn't get served at the counter. My dad, man, he had 3 brothers who were fighting for the wrong side in World War II. And Black veterans could not sit at the lunch counter, and my dad could. Let that sink in, listeners. Let that sink in for just a second. My dad, who had 3 brothers who literally had fought for the Nazis got a free pass to sit at whatever lunch counter he wanted to in the United States. And black veterans who had been fighting against the Nazis couldn't sit at the lunch counter. Let that sink in. If you want a more clear indictment of how deeply embedded white supremacy is in the United States experience, that's it right there. That is it right there. Where the kid brother of three people, and again, let me just say too that I don't know. Well, that's not important. That's neither here nor there. But at least one of my uncles was planning to go to seminary, and I don't think ideologically he was, but also, yeah. I'll never know, and I'm not gonna spend time doing what my fellow white people do, which is trying to distance ourselves from. I mean, part of me wants to, and then part of me realizes it's bullshit. Yeah.
No, yeah, I have a lot of questions about Nazi Germany too, and the Nazis themselves, because on one end I kind of felt like, to a degree, what do you do in that situation? That's a hell of a position to be in, which I think I probably have to off myself before I do some of the things that those people done. But that's a hell of a position to be in. Either you serve this supremacy, this superiority complex that Mr. Hitler had, or you die yourself if you don't do the deed. So that's a crazy position to be in. So, but I do get what you're saying.
And two, history's repeating itself right here, right now. Here's the other thing. Before Hitler came to power, Germany was poor. The wealth inequality was staggering. When you don't know how you're going to pay your next bill, and then you see an ad for sign up for ICE and make $50,000 sign-on bonus, hello. Like, in other words, what a fascist needs is people who are destitute, who they can blame other people for them. Right? So Nixon's Southern strategy, real quick. Your listeners probably know Nixon's Southern strategy, which was, we're going to use propagandized words to scare suburban white voters about black people. So Nixon would never say black, quote unquote, or the N word, but he would say inner city thugs. Okay, come on, friend. We know what he was trying to say. So Nixon's Southern strategy 1.0 was, hey, suburban white America, you need to be scared of black people. Now, here's the thing. In 2001, they rehashed it. Nixon's Southern strategy 2.0 was, dear everybody in the U.S. who's not Muslim, you need to be scared of Muslims. There's a scary Muslim around every corner. Y'all saw 9/11. There's a scary Muslim around every corner. One time my in-laws were like, yeah, all the Muslims are trying to kill us. I had a Muslim woman in my house over fall break who was a student. She cooked dinner for me and my wife, and I've gotten to be a smartass with my in-laws. I was like, she didn't try to kill me even one time. But real quick, let me just say that Nixon's Southern Strategy 3.0, if anybody's listening today, so it's not, oh, suburban white people need to be scared of black people. It's not, oh, Christians and atheists and Jewish people need to be scared of Muslim people. Right now, it's transgender people. It's the same old story, because they counted on white suburban people in the 60s to not have a black friend or enough black friends to combat the stereotypes. They counted on us in 2001, 2002, 2003 to not have enough Muslim friends to combat the stereotypes. And now they're counting on us to not have any transgender friends to combat the stereotypes, because all they're doing is the same thing Hitler did, which is, here are the people to blame. Spoiler, that's not the people to blame. It's never been the people to blame.
And now it's Somalians, apparently.
Oh, for crying out loud. I mean, it is, I can't even, I can't even.
This all, to me, even racism itself, I don't really think it's true. I don't really think that it's a realistic tool that white supremacy uses. I think they know that it is a is a fictional tool. And what I mean by that is, I think that it's pushed by corporations for free labor. And I say that because if you think about it, in order to get a society of white people who just came across the ocean, who were discriminated upon themselves, who were placed into lower classes and pushed off into this new world called America, you had to create opportunities for them to find privilege within themselves and self-worth. So I really feel like a lot of these wealthy corporations that came across with them to knock down the forest and to create cities and things like that, I think they needed free labor. And I think the way, because it was a lot of African Americans who were in relationships with white women and back and forth before slavery came about. So I think you had to create the conditions for free labor within that market.
Race is a social construct. We made it up, but it is a social construct with real world implications. So in other words, we created it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have life and death consequences. And so the reality is, when I hear people say, and I hear white people say this a lot, I also hear some communities of color saying, well, we're all people, we're all human, and race is a fiction to divide us. And I'm like, yes, correct. It is a fiction to divide us, but we've all been operating under that fiction for so long that the dividing and the inequities are real, even if the thing that precipitated it, that started it, is fiction. And so we can't, when I say that race is a social construct that we made up, that is 100% true. And when I say that in racialized America, I have more access to wealth, education, healthcare, ease of movement, commerce, my First Amendment rights, all my rights, than other communities that are not white men, that is also true, right? I've seen videos, man. In my city, you have a white man walking around with a gun on his hip, and people it makes me nervous. I'm scared. Like, I'm more scared of a white man with a gun than any other demographic, because I know the statistics, period, right? But yet, one black man shows up with a gun, and suddenly I see like 3 different police cars are just around magically, right? And it is so obvious once you look, once you get out of the fish tank. Once you get out of the fish tank for 1 second, and that's all. And this is why I do my work, because my goal is, you're in this fish tank, your bubble. Okay, come check out another fish tank. You're a man. Think about, do you have to wait in line to go to the bathroom? You're a white person. Think about, do you look around the room for someone who's going to provide you some cultural touch point or some safety when you go into a room full of people? You live on the rich side of the red line. Do you ever think about the time it takes you to go to the grocery store? Man, sometimes I'm so lazy, man. Sometimes there'll be something I want, and the grocery store I got a grocery store 5 minutes from my house. And sometimes my wife and I will sit there, do you want to go? No. Do you want to go? Do you want to go? And I'm like, part of me is like, dude, if I was on the east side of town, going to the grocery store and back is an hour. It's an hour. It's an hour where you can't earn money. It's an hour you can't spend with your kids. It's an hour, and it's gas, right? And it's all these things that make being poor cost even more. And it's all grounded in racism. And for your listeners who don't know about redlining, I'm not going to say the whole thing, but there's a great video called Adam Ruins Everything. And it's a comedian named Adam. And he brings on Nicole Hannah-Jones, who's the author of the 1619 Project. So Nicole Hannah-Jones, man, that's a whole nother story about her not getting tenure at a predominantly white university and then going up to Howard up in D.C. There's a whole other story about that. But Nicole Hannah-Jones and Adam Ruins Everything Redlining Edition, if any of your listeners want like a 5-minute version of what that is, they address it so well, and why, even though the practice is technically illegal now, how the wealth from it, or lack of wealth from it, is still here. It's like white people started playing Monopoly, and then after we had all done 20 rounds around the board, we invited some black people to sit down and say, hey, all the rules are the same. And the black people were like, well, the rules are the same, but you've already bought all the houses. Like you bought Baltic Avenue, you bought Boardwalk and Park Place, you bought it. Like, so, and the white people are like, no, but the rules are the same. And I'm like, yeah, no, the rules are the same now, but you cheated for 250 years. And so like, yeah.
But then you get the person, the white person, who gets to actually sit in that imaginary space and say, I worked hard for everything I got. But they never really tell you that grandma died and left everybody $100,000 a piece, right? And great grandpa before grandma died and left $50,000 a piece. And you don't get to hear that story, because it's very hard to work from ground zero up to when you already come with 1,000 points, 1,000 credits before you even get rolling. And it's already built in. So That's always an unfortunate thing. But when I listen to people talk about the hard work and effort that they put in, I do understand that a white person can work very hard, and I have great white friends who work super hard for what they've gotten. But for some reason, when I look at what they have versus what I have, it's usually a little bit bigger.
For real, for real. And here's the challenge. And when I talk to white people, my fellow white people who say, "Oh, well, systemic racism doesn't exist," I'm like, I will believe you if you can do one thing. One thing for me. All you have to do is find someone my age. I'm just over 50. All you gotta do is find a black person that's my age who had a black great grandparent that had a business that created enough wealth that the black person who's my age didn't have to pay for college. You find me one of those and I'll shut up. One. Just find me one. Find me one. Because here's the reality. I had my U.S. side, my great grandfather was he was in New Albany, Indiana, had a company called Chester B. Stem Wood. He had a wood company. He made enough money. He gave some money to my grandmother. By the time it was time for me to go to college, I went to a cheap state college. She covered my tuition. I still had to work a part-time job to get my books, or whatever. But I didn't come out with student loans. I came out with like $3,000 of debt. That's it. That is it. Most of the guys in my chapter who had also gone to inexpensive state schools, anybody who's close to my age, they had a student loan. And so my challenge is anybody who says, well, systemic racism doesn't exist. I'm like, okay, let's just do an experiment. Find me a 50-year-old black person, one 50-year-old black person who had a great grandparent who was also black. Because sometimes, you might have had a white great grandparent or something, right? But you had a great grandparent who was also black, who had a company that made enough money that by this generation, they didn't have to pretty much pay for their college, more or less. Then I'll sit down and shut up, but you're not going to find it.
In your TED Talk, you talk about $100. If you gave someone $100, a minority person, $100 back in,
16,
I want to say it was pre-slavery.
19. Yep.
1619.
Yep.
And you were talking about the free labor aspect.
Yes.
Because there's this myth that the minorities were lazy but somehow they did all the work.
Built our whole country, but yeah.
Yeah. But then whites are hardworking. So can you tell me about if every slave was to have gotten $100 in 1619? What would that be?
Yeah. And so the backstory was, what I did first is I was like, what would a white, non-enslaved day laborer make in his lifetime? And in his lifetime, he'd make about $52,000, which is not a lot. A lifetime, $52,000. But if you put that lifetime earnings of one non-enslaved day laborer, so white people, in an account and just compounded at 5% interest, their whole life earning. And this is a little different from one of you guys. Is it okay if I share this number?
Knock it out.
So what the stolen labor of one enslaved person from 1619 compounded for interest at 5%, $29 billion. Billion with a B. One enslaved day laborer. I got throw it, man. I got literally in my
I could have been rich, man.
But two, it's a system too. Because hold on, I told you I worked at the oldest women's college in the country in 1772. It's a predominantly white university. Just 15 minutes down the road is a small historically black women's college, and they lost their accreditation for finance because they don't have enough money. They lost their accreditation to give degrees because they don't have enough money. And I'm like, pause, stop. A white woman in 1776 or 8 or whenever that my little white women college had started was allowed to get wealth and could give money back to her college. And then over there, the women at the other college called Bennett College, historically black college, that college wasn't even allowed to start yet because, there weren't colleges for black folks that early. And so it's not just the individual, it's the system. Because think about this. One enslaved person's day labor, right? If you could trace back $29 billion, put it among 128 descendants, come on now, right? Come on. That's stolen money. That's stolen labor. And white America didn't want to hear it. And so every white American who says, oh, well, I work hard for everything. I'm like, yes, sure. You do work hard for everybody. How's that road that you take to work treating you? How's that cheap electricity treating you? How's that infrastructure in your town treating you? Because guess what? You didn't build that. That was built by black enslaved people. We had stolen labor build an infrastructure for you to work hard within. So sure, you're working hard, but you're working hard within some infrastructure, my friend, and you didn't build it, right?
You start off wide, right? With all these options and choices.
Yeah, I'm looking for substance. So if you can't come with a substance level of conversation, I have no interest.
Okay.
You black man taking the liking of how my lifestyle is living and how I'm going, man. Being intrigued, man. That's very humbling for me, man.
There was a lot of nice nights on that porch when you were a white slave owner where you were getting to play the violin and eat apple pie while these people were sitting out there busting their balls from sunup to sundown with trauma on top of trauma, having to work through that. Your baby's gone, your wife is in another plantation having sex with a slave owner. How much trauma was that? So I mean, I get that. I'm glad that you're the type of person who just period, that you're the type of person who speaks truthfully, about things. There's a lot of people who it would be tough for a person to speak honest about these things, which is why a large part of me, when I think about African American history in America and a lot of different historical, things that minorities had to deal with in this country, there is a portion of me that always wants to thank those white people from back in the day and even now who speak up, who are willing to fight the fight with us, because you can't dismantle any type of systematic oppression without someone within that system being an advocate for what you do. So when I think about white history, when I think about black history, I think about, not only do I think about the Nat Turners, I think about the John Browns who lost 3 sons and still kept relationship with, I think it was Harriet Tubman, who, through his faith, he was willing to fight the good fight. And I see good white people out every day standing in those activist lines and fighting the good fight for us. So I like to call out that
the freedom riders too. And I mean, one of the things though that's important is that, and this is the thing, any of your listeners, and this is the thing is, again, I've got all the privilege. I got all the privilege in the US. But here's the thing. If any of your listeners share whiteness with me, man, let's work every day to stop racism. If any of your listeners share manness with me, hey y'all, let's work on misogyny, right? If anybody that's listening shares that I'm not currently disabled, right? I didn't have to, like when I go to a building, I don't have to look for a ramp, right? I don't, when I go to a speech or when I go to a conference, I don't need to find an interpreter. If I, X, Y, and Z. So if you're not currently disabled, join me in fighting ableism, right? If you're not transgender, if you're like me, you're cisgender, help me shut down transphobia. If you're not part of the gay and lesbian community, help me, because like you said, so let me say, as a straight white cisgender college educated middle class dude, there is zero incentive. There is no incentive for me to be in community with those groups or advocate for those groups. There's zero incentive. But what I'm saying is that the incentive is that all of our liberation is bound. I saw a bunch of white people freaking out on social media about a woman getting shot in Minnesota. Oh, I can't believe this would happen here. I'm like, this has been happening here the whole time, my friend. You just haven't been, it hasn't come to your doorstep yet until now, maybe. But did you not hear Black Lives Matter? Did you not hear the names? Did you not hear that the state has been executing people, maybe not quote unquote your people yet, white America, but the state has been executing people indiscriminately for our entire history. And so like that's the thing, is that our liberation is all connected, right? And I think that shooting in Minnesota, the reality is, it's sad. It is sad that that's what it's going to take to wake some white people up. And even though it's sad, I'll take it. I mean, there's this guy I follow, the Jolly Good Ginger. There's another guy called the White George. The White George goes on these tours of historically black colleges. These are two of the white people that I admire, the Jolly Good Ginger and the White George. But the Jolly Good Ginger, he's like, a lot of my fellow white people very late to the party, but you're here now, so we're marching tomorrow, right? And so like it's tough because I want to hold them accountable for their willful ignorance, and if they're ready today, they're ready today. If we get to beloved community, if we reach beloved community one day, then I will sit down with those white people and be like, that was late. You were so late. I was late. But by my standards, I was late. By some people's standards, maybe I wasn't. But by my standards, I was late. There were things I was doing at 18, 19, 20 years old. And I look back now and I'm like, that was doing damage to the Black community. That was doing damage to the gay community. That was doing damage it was ignorant of the disabled community, right?
Yeah, we're all ignorant. I was just driving through the parking lot of Kroger's, which only takes me 2 minutes to get to in my vehicle, literally. And I was driving through the parking lot and I seen all these handicap spaces. And I was like, why the fuck are all of these handicap spots here? And I had to check myself. I was like, these is for handicapped people. What are you complaining about? Because you have to walk an extra 35 feet, right? So
Say to yourself, I have the privilege to walk that many feet. When I'm at the gym and I feel like I'm getting tired, and then I see a dude walk in with a prosthetic leg, I'm like, shut the fuck up.
I see a lady with MS in there getting it every freaking day, and I'm whining about nothing. But I did want to jump really quick because you do comedy. You are a improv comic. How do you jump? How do you jump from being an improv comedian to being a part of a Black fraternity, to being a professor, to writing this well-written book about leading with emotional intelligence? How do you keep jumping from life to life to life, man? That's got to be tough.
But the reality is, it's all connected. It's all connected. In other words, and so my newest book is called Improv: Comedy and the Art of Leadership. Because when you're up on stage as an improv comedian, improv, for your listeners who don't know, it's like, whose line is it anyway? You're making it up on the spot. And so we get up on stage and we say to the audience, name a celebrity. They're like, Beyonce. Cool. Name a world leader. And they'll be like, Joe Biden. Cool. Name an interesting place in the world. Okay, Colombia. Okay, cool. And name something you might find in your garage. Okay, weed whacker. So my scene is about Joe Biden and Beyonce with a weed whacker in Colombia. That's my scene. And I got to deliver it with a team of people who just got that information. We got to figure that out. Who's going to be doing the single ladies dance? Who's got the best Joe Biden impression? Who knows something about Colombia that's not going to sound culturally appropriating, whatever. You've got to practice bending your brain a lot. Trust me when I say the listening you've got to do as an improv comedian, the cultural sensitivity and awareness, because trust me, if I'm the guy who's got to do the single ladies dance as a white guy, I've got to approach it a certain way or it's going to come off bad. And that when you think about that, and then you think about leading other people, being a leader, being a manager, it's a lot of similar content, right? And so there's a lot about improv comedy, and plus I do a lot of keynote speeches now. And I don't know if a lot of your listeners have been to keynote speeches, but a lot of keynote speeches are boring, and
very, very boring.
And so I tell people all the time, I'm like, in the U.S., I have not yet found another person that's got a doctorate in leadership that was also an improv comedian. I might be it. That might just be it. And so, how cool is it that companies or universities or nonprofits get to learn about being better leaders from somebody with a background in comedy? And two, when we get into the DEI things, when we get into the difference conversations, when I'm trying to get this conversation we were having, when I'm trying to get my fellow white people, or my fellow men, or my fellow whoever it is, heterosexual people, whatever it is, when I'm trying to get them a little further, trust me when I say push, and then make some jokes. Push, and then make some jokes, right? And because that is the way people, like, I'll go back to about 10 years ago on Twitter, there was white people ask Black people anything, and Black people ask white people anything on Twitter. It was hilarious. And one of the ones that I always tell in workshops, I'm like, yeah, this Black person said to the white person, hey, why did y'all conquer half the globe looking for spices and y'all don't use spices in your food? And I'm like, yup, correct. And so being able to laugh at whiteness, laugh at heterosexualness, laugh at manness, laugh at not being disabled, it's getting out of the fish tank, just like you're talking about. It's zooming out a little bit. Yeah.
Man, this has been a great show, man. I've really appreciated you coming on. where can we find your books at? How can we get a hold of you?
Yeah. So adaptivechallengeconsulting.com is my website, and you can get my books there. My books are also on Amazon, but then also I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. LinkedIn's easy, and you can find me Alan Mueller, but you can also find Adaptive Challenge Consulting. And two, if you want to start your own leadership journey, there's so many free webinars I've got on my LinkedIn. So if you go to Adaptive Challenge Consulting on LinkedIn, you're going to see webinars with amazing leaders with diverse stories and backgrounds and different fields, where I'm interviewing different folks on different leadership concepts. And we keep it moving, we keep it light, we keep it fun, but there's a lot of great free information there as well. If you just want to start learning more about leadership. Yeah.
Man, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We love you to come back, man. I like the way we mesh well together. It's fun talking to you.